Now, hello, and thank you. You're on live with the Hatchet Man.
Brother Craig, this is Janice Arnold Jones calling from New Mexico.
How are you tonight?
I am so much better than I deserve. Thank you very much.
You know something? That has turned into one of my favorite sayings. I forget the guy's name. I first heard that. Well, actually, I was out in a neighborhood working, and I just happened to pass by a gentleman, and we greeted one another. And hello, how are you? And then he said, better than I deserve. And that struck me. And since then, I've heard this financial guru say it all the time, and so it's odd that you would say that, but that's one of my favorite expressions. And we thank you so much for joining us. And it was such a delight meeting you. I had an opportunity to meet you at the state convention, and you were just a delightful person, and I'm just so happy to have you as a part of the really real deal.
Well, thank you so much, and we're so excited about what you are doing. You know, this conversation must go clear across our nation. If we, the voters, do not understand what the people stand for or what the issues are, how on earth are we going to take our government back?
Exactly. And so, that's what this is all about. And, it was interesting. I was at a conference this morning and had quite a few speakers, and Mayor Rudy Giuliani was one of the speakers who was talking about technology and the power of it, and he was chiding the president for saying that there's too much technology and that it's almost like white noise, that you just need to block it out and shy away from it. And Rudy was taking an opposite position, and of course we're on new media, and so this is where it's at. It's all about information, and just so we're going to give you your opportunity to just share what you want to share with the voters. And so maybe in your own way, go ahead and introduce yourself and what your platform is and why we who are conservatives should elect you to run up against Dennis in November.
Well, I would say, So I'm going to start with a little background, but I want to get back to technology because it is such an important component. But for your listeners who may not know me, I'm a Navy wife. My husband served for 23 years. So as a Navy wife, you become rather adept at creating or recreating yourself on a regular basis. And so during that time, I have been in various businesses, opened businesses of my own as we have been traveling. And currently, I'm a mom, I'm a soccer coach, and I'm a state legislator, and I manage a business in Albuquerque, all at the same time. It is a privilege to serve in our state legislature. One of the little-known facts is New Mexico has one of the few remaining citizen legislators, and that is we're not paid for our services. We serve because it is our duty. And I must tell you, it is a privilege beyond words.
And, that's fantastic. And it's just, here lately I've been learning a lot about the Founding Fathers and that spirit that they had. And, that was what the whole idea was. You would just not have it as a career. It would just be something you would do part-time. In your career, you would have to serve in some other capacity to earn a living. And so it would be really, really nice if we could get 50 out of 50 states doing that, because it seems like the less folks are in the State House, the more freedom the rest of us have.
Well, I would say the other, if we can't do it one way, let's do it another way. Last year in 2009, I tried to make sure that the voters could be in the State House. So contrary to some of our standard practices, I took a webcam to my committees because my constituents were furious that they did not have access to the process. And, we're one of 3 states in the Union that did not provide any access whatsoever. Now, I have to tell you that the leadership was a little angry with me because I took these little tools in, and from my seat, webcast the committee, and my, what I learned. I had a little chat feature on there, and I know you know about this. And one time we were listening to a bill on water, and a man chatted in and said, "This guy's lying," and I'm going, "Oh my!" And so I sent a little note back and says, "Well, tell me why, and tell me the question you would have me ask so that I can illuminate the fact that we're getting misinformation." It changed the whole discussion.
Wow.
Profound.
Nothing like sunlight. Greatest disinfectant ever.
Well, and nothing like the citizens participating in their own government. You can go to a capital or to Washington and impose policy on people, but it will be an imposed policy. Really good policy comes from the ground up. And then we all respect it and we all live with it because it's right. But when you try to create it from afar and you don't know the details, you serve no one.
Exactly. And so it seems like quite often folks are serving themselves, really. And do we have in New Mexico income reporting where people, what is their income when they enter government and what is their income when they leave government? I know that on the federal level, the ranges, and matter of fact, even in my home state where I'm from in Virginia, the ranges are so broad as to make them useless. What's the situation in New Mexico?
We have a little work yet to do. Every year I do file a disclosure statement. But for the average citizen to see whether or not my income has made a moderate progression, as if anybody would if you were working, or did I make quantum leaps, very hard for them to dig that out because the process that we use is not particularly transparent. And I know that you were talking to my friend Senator Diana Duran earlier, and one of the really funny things about our state is, we have 2 national laboratories in our state, plus White Sands Missile Range, plus a large intel facility within the state of New Mexico. But the campaign finance reporting requirements are almost laughable. The system barely works. And if you really wanted to dig in and find out where the money is coming from and where it's going to, very difficult. And yet those systems and processes exist elsewhere in the world, in the state, just not in government.
Right, and I know ethics and sunshine has been one of your issues.
Absolutely.
Now, what about educating folks? Because with an educated population, is more difficult to pull the wool over their eyes. And so I know you've taken some strong stances on education. And, of course, my folks know my pet thing by now is that, and I know it won't happen overnight, but at some point I'm wondering, how do we get to the place where people are educated in a school where the principal is the CEO of his own school and not a government employee who has a bureaucracy to please, but he has to please a customer? How do we get there?
Well, Brother Craig, I think times are moving very quickly, and the one positive here is our children are so smart. They get it, they understand it, and do not underestimate them. As it comes to our school systems, if we continue to deny them access to knowledge, they are going to go around the school systems. And it's going to happen very quickly. So if we don't, as the adults here, if we don't figure out a way to provide access to knowledge, the school system that you say today just may simply fail to exist. And that may be a very good thing. You were talking earlier about the president saying that we had too much technology, too much internet.
Yes.
My. Knowledge sets you free.
Yes.
And there is no other statement, but our children are smart enough to understand that. So the next question for me is what are we doing to integrate the best curriculum into our classrooms? What happens in a state when you don't have enough math teachers or enough qualified science teachers? Do you just sit there and hold your children down, which is a little bit what we've done in our state? Or do we find ways to access knowledge through this wonderful tool that is available to us? Did you know that MIT offers something called MIT Open Courseware? Absolutely free if you're interested.
Wow,
Destination.
MIT Square. We're going to look into that. And now we know you know your stuff because you're, like our previous guest, you're a businesswoman, correct?
I am.
Yeah, and I've read something about the success you've had. Would you maybe like to share? Because that is fantastic. I mean, that's, I really respect business people because that's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, and certainly those business processes come to bear in the state legislature. But I am really pleased to run an audio and video production company that lasted over 20 years. And, of course, it was started in San Diego because my husband was stationed in San Diego, and we continued on. But as the years progressed and we had children, I have been managing a business in Albuquerque. We're Department of Energy contractors doing rather sophisticated things that require a hard, significant background in mathematics. And I am afraid that I won't be able to find a single New Mexico student to fill that slot. So, and when I tell you this story, this is a bit of a common story, unfortunately, across our states, but it's a national security issue. Our children are going to be competing not just within our own state or across our nation. They are today competing with India and China. And when I think about the form of competition that we have with India turning out almost 100,000 engineers a year in their country and double that in China, and I believe we're producing 10,000 new engineers every year in the United States, we're in trouble.
Wow.
We have to change that dynamic.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And, it was interesting. I've never quite heard it put. I really like what you said a minute ago, that this system may just fade away because our students who are really the customers in education, they're going to find a way to go around it because they actually do, a certain percentage of them anyway, actually have a thirst for knowledge.
That is the one thing that keeps me going, is they are hungry. And, when I see students failing, and, there are lots of reasons why our students are failing, and of course, if a child fails to learn to read, and let me just tell you, learning to read by third grade, if our children aren't reading in first grade, they are going to struggle.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt we have to hit that mark first. And there is no putting this off. But if we fail to educate them, if we fail to provide access to knowledge, they know when they're not competitive. You don't even have to tell them.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
And when they check out because they're bored out of their minds, it's time for some new ways to go after things. There is a whole group of students that truly are self-directed, and we warehouse them in high school. Now, there are lots of reasons to stay in high school, but if we are warehousing students or simply doing like the dual credit programs, if you are truly shortening your lifespan in college, so if you do 2 years of work while you're in high school, then you should only have to do 2 more years of work in college and be set free. But if you're in high school and you're able to do the work and you haven't graduated, maybe it's time that we let you go. Let you go so you can succeed.
Yes, I am 100% agreement with that. Now, we're kind of up against the clock, but if you would stay with us a little bit beyond when we stop streaming, we're going to stop streaming in about 4 minutes. But the show will be, it'll be available for download, so the rest of our conversation it'll be captured and people will be able to download it later. And so as long as you want to stay. So while we're streaming, if you want to maybe share what your primary goal for governor is and also how people can contact your campaign and to donate or to volunteer.
Well, of course, I have a website. It's www.janiceforgovernor.com, and that's Janice and then the word FOR, governor.com. The phone number for the campaign office is 505-884-4238. And, running for governor is such a privilege, so let me just give you the highlights. Our economy is broken. We have too many government sector jobs. It is choking us. Add to that an unpredictable, arbitrary taxation and regulatory climate in our state, we're not competitive any longer. So as governor, I am going to make sure the entire world knows what assets New Mexico brings to the table, and we have got to change our climate. But I have to tell you what, Brother Craig, we have an ethics problem here. And if our first priority isn't cleaning up corruption, I fear we will not get much else accomplished. I have a mindset, and I will tell every listener, anybody who comes my way, I believe that government should be transparently accountable to the people at all times. I believe in operating in the open. That is what I will do. And anyone who is willing to do the people's business but is afraid to do it in the open, they shouldn't be doing the people's business. Now, of course, we've already talked about education, but I do want to tell you the wonderful part about New Mexico, and that is energy. We can and should be the largest energy exporter in the nation. And when I say energy, I do mean energy, whether it's coal, oil, or gas, wind, solar, biomass, geothermal, or nuclear. We have it all, and we have all the mining resources and those elements in our ground. Our problem is we can't get it out of our state. The state government has to find a way to get out of the way, to build out the infrastructure, to get our resources to market. And while I'm talking about those resources, I'd like for your listeners to know that New Mexico is the 7th largest dairy producer in the nation. We need to get our agricultural products to the state line as well. I would love to be the governor of this state. I am working hard. The citizens in this state deserve so much more. We deserve to go from a state of potential to the state of success. Let's go there. That's JaniceForGovernor.com, area code 505-884-4238.
Wow, you are fantastic. You got all that in, and we're in our last. Well, actually, we have 90 seconds. I just heard it. But,
90 seconds. Well, it's those governor forums that I've been on.
You're fantastic. I really appreciate it. But now I would like to ask you one other question that'll be folks will be able to download it later because, as I said, the rest of our conversation we're going to stop streaming in about 60 seconds. But the immigration issue and national state. By bordering on Mexico, and the big issue in Arizona, and of course the poverty pimps are trying to portray it as something racist when it's really not. And as I've said to our previous guests, that I don't think this strategy is going to work now because people are hip to that, and they realize that this is a great country, a loving country, a fair country, and this is not a racist country, or we would not have elected Barack Obama president if we were. So with killing the race card, what's the big issue now of just implementing law that is a common sense law and a national security issue?
Well, I would say you got me unless you really want to give away your country. And so, Brother Craig, I will tell you, I have read the Arizona law. It's 17 pages. It's a great read. It's a restatement of the federal law, something that we should have been doing. So for us citizens, we need to get active. We have to have a border. And as you know, Brother Craig, good fences really and truly make good neighbors. We don't have a border right now for the state of New Mexico. And it's not just our neighbors to the south. We have people coming from all over the world who are crossing our borders illegally. And you know what? Their intentions are not good. Honorable people from all countries cross the border, and they do so with respect for the nation that they're visiting. Coming into our country illegally is disrespectful. Yes.
And now the president talked about people having a fear of someone saying, "Where are your paperwork?" When he's taking his children out for ice cream, now he's having a steak dinner tonight, and I guarantee you he's asking, "Where's your paperwork?"
Now, Brother Craig, I have to tell you what, that statement is the one thing that just frosts my butt. If you have a broken taillight, which is the requirement of the Arizona law, you have to have done something criminal, and it actually has to be more serious than a broken taillight, but let's start there. And you are pulled over. The police officer is going to ask you two questions. And the first question is, where's your driver's license? And the second question is, where's your registration and proof of insurance? Now, if you can't produce either of those documents, they have now not only the right but the authority to go further. But I'm telling you what, do you think your driver's license and your registration is papers?
Yes.
But
we do it
every single person in this nation should have those papers. So to suggest that this is some Nazi ploy to take away your rights when, in fact, it is here to preserve your rights just floors me.
Yes, and all it is a play for votes, and it's a war we have to win. It's a battle we have to win, and so I'm just so happy that we have people like you that are out here pushing hard and championing that. And,
well, Brother Craig, in our state we have some serious problems, and I was in the legislature when the law was passed that issued driver's licenses to illegals in our state. And the argument was so remarkable on the floor. The argument was that if we provided driver's licenses, people in our state who were here illegally would buy insurance. Now, I have to tell you, I was there, and I don't know if you buy that argument. I do have a little swampland by the base of the Sandia Mountains. But nonetheless, one of the worst parts about that statement was, okay, so now the insurance lapses. What systems, what technology systems are going to help you figure out when that policy lapses so you can go enforce the fact that they're supposed to have insurance? And the answer is there is no system.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting me riled up here, Brother Craig.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I don't want to be the only one slinging a hatchet. I bring it and I sling it, but we need to send someone to Santa Fe that can bring it and sling it. So right on. Yeah, you get the gold star.
Well, thank you. Well, the Arizona law, and I have to say, thank you, Arizona. And Governor Brewer for signing the bill. When people read the bill, you will find that the onus of this law is actually on the state employers. And it says in that law that a rebuttable defense to accidentally hiring someone who is here illegally and not authorized to work is the E-Verify program. Now, federal law says that if you're hiring folks, you are supposed to use an I-9, which verifies that you are here legally and you're legally able to work, and that you will double-check that by using the E-Verify system. This is federal law that Arizona put into their trespassing statutes. In my state, in the state of New Mexico, I am surprised at the number of employers who have never heard of I-9 and E-Verify.
Wow.
So there are many things that we can do. We have the power to fix this. But Arizona, they drew a line in the sand. If the state of New Mexico does not stand up for itself, every criminal in the world is going to pass through my state. That is unacceptable.
Yeah, and you know what happens when you have a tightening of law in one area and then the neighbor fails to tighten up the law. All that traffic merely reroutes itself.
Well, and our surrounding states have, to a very large extent, already done that, although Arizona has done so much more publicly than any other state. And speaking about technology, and Brother Craig, you got me spun up here. Do you have a few minutes? And I will tell you about the situation of communications.
Go ahead.
Well, we lost a rancher down in what we call our Boot Heel area. That's the southwestern corner of New Mexico. And a murder actually occurred on the Arizona side of the border.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about the threat to our citizens in New Mexico, part of the problem is, again, our infrastructure. We have no 911 service in our Boot Heel. The interoperability, yes, it is a real problem. But the one thing that I learned from the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers was that our first responders need to be able to communicate. And I work very hard to make sure that we set up our laws so that our first responders, including our sheriffs, our Border Patrol, and our National Guard could actually talk with one another. But in the Boot Heel, there was no connectivity. There was not enough radio communication support for those three entities to talk. And here's the real rub. Our law enforcement communities are limited in their radio frequencies. Do you think the Mexican drug cartel has limited radio frequency issues?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. So this is not only a state issue, this is a federal issue. And you know what? The FCC needs to get off their butt and deal with this issue because it's costing us lives. I see the drugs running up the western side of our state into the center of the state of New Mexico. And you know what? We now have generations of families hooked on some very serious drugs.
Yes.
You've got to pull back the covers and see where the problems are.
Serious issues. And so, like I've told the other guests, if there's anything, we're going to be praying for you, and we're going to, God be with you. Anything you ever need the Hatchet man to do, you have an issue, you need a hatchet slung around, I'll not only sling my hatchet, I'll be grinning while I sling it.
Well, I would say if we can take on the federal government a little bit, and I'll take any help we can get to clean up the corruption in this state. It's almost as if people have, or maybe they just didn't know that other states do not operate in this corrupt manner. In fact, the corruption is so great in our state right now, it also makes us uncompetitive. It costs more money to do business here because if you don't know somebody and you don't pay them off, you may not get to go to work here.
Yeah,
Craig, we can do so much better.
Yeah, that's the whole problem with statism in a nutshell, which is why there's so many folks arguing for limited government, because if you just get the government out of it, then you have a better chance of having a meritocracy rather than having to pay off someone in order to get something done. And you're just so absolutely right.
Well, one of the underbellies of the Governor Richardson administration was his targeted tax incentives. And it had been highly touted. Our tax system has gone from low, broad, fair, and equitable in our state to very vertical. That means fewer people are paying more taxes. And then we had targeted tax incentives. And let me decode this just a little bit. Within a particular industry, let's pick the solar industry. Company XYZ is the governor's friend, so they get a targeted tax incentive. But all the rest of the alphabet that's left, they didn't get a targeted tax incentive. Excuse me?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of policy is that? The American people are willing to compete. They want to compete. They just want a level playing field.
Yeah, another thing that does is that once you have less competition, then they're free to raise prices.
Exactly.
Yeah, sounds like a lose-lose.
It was a lose-lose. But, we as citizens of this great country, we're not helpless. We just have to pay attention and stand up and take it back. Our country, our state.
Amen, and that's what we're trying to do. We're going to give your phone number out again, 505-884-4238. That's JaniceForGovernor.com. And you have any... And please, folks, go to the donate page and volunteer. And I guess you can call the number to volunteer. And but folks typically donate through your website. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Brother Craig, I tell you what, we have you posted on my website now, and it has just been such a pleasure to talk with you. And I am praying for you. I want you to be strong. I want you to sling that hatchet because we have a big job in front of us, but we can do it.
Amen.
Together,
we can
do together.
All of us together. Amen. We can do it. That is so kind, and we just really, really appreciate it. We not only appreciate your time because I know it's crunch time and you're very, very busy, but I appreciate your kind words. It really means a lot.
Brother Craig, it has been a privilege. God bless you, and I hope to see you very, very soon.
Okay. Thank you, and God bless you, too. You have a good night.
Good night.
Okay, well,